Excuse me, miss. Do you think it might be possible to turn that music down so maybe a couple of the boys could talk?
That music is for everyone, Mr. McMurphy.
Yeah, I know, but you think we might ease it down a little bit so maybe the boys didn't have to shout? Huh?
What you probably don't realize is that we have a lot of old men on this ward who couldn't hear the music if we turned it lower. That music is all they have.
Broadcasting from Foothill College, this is KFJC, Los Altos Hills.
Well, good evening. It's about a minute after 6 o'clock in the Greater Bay Area, and broadcasting from Foothill College, this is KFJC, Los Altos Hills, and this is Thoughtline, where each week we try to tell you fun things, interesting things, things you need to know. And tonight's no exception. Tonight we're going to talk about, well, happiness is a habit that you're developing, that the past is gone forever, and that all love given returns. So these are some of the acceptance statements for a new life program, part of Women for Sobriety. We're going to be talking about sobriety and recovery tonight. And we have on the phone with us Adrian Miller, who is the president and CEO of Women for Sobriety. She started as a volunteer at a Seattle support group, became a peer support group facilitator, got a BA in psychology and chemical dependency counseling, and is with us here tonight. And we also have Mary Beth O'Connor, who is a retired federal administrative law judge who's on the board of the She Recovers Foundation and the LifeRing Secular Recovery organization. She's a recovery advocate and has been published in the Wall Street Journal and the Philadelphia Inquirer. Well, good evening, ladies, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having us. So excited to be here.
Yeah, this is great. Well, let me start with Adrian. So Women for Sobriety is a program that's specifically for women. Why does there need to be a recovery program strictly for women?
Well, that's a great question, and I could give a very long answer to that. But I will spare your listeners the long answer. The shorter answer is that, women in our society are just raised differently than men. We're socialized differently than men in so many ways. And our priorities are set very differently than men in a lot of our upbringing and our socialization. And so our recovery needs are just different. So some of the ways that this can show up in the recovery rooms is, we saw it in the Me Too movement and some of that stuff that, sexual harassment and assault are really still quite rampant in our society. And this shows up in recovery support spaces as well. So we've found that having women-only spaces can just really help eliminate some of that, as well as eliminate some of the trepidation that some women might feel in being fully authentic and vulnerable in a mixed-gender environment. And over the years, Women for Sobriety was founded in 1975, and it was really a pioneering organization talking about how women have different needs. But the research has really borne that out and has really showed that women respond much better to single-gender treatment. They just have better outcomes, higher level of comfort in group processes, all of that kind of stuff. So it's quite advantageous for women to recover in women-only spaces, and I think that's really a reflection of our society. We're hopeful that someday women and men can recover in the same spaces and have the same needs in recovery. And of course, we're just not there yet. So until then, Women for Sobriety will be here to help support women with their gender-specific needs in recovery.
And let me ask Mary Beth O'Connor that everybody's familiar with AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous, and their 12-step program. Tell us a little bit about why it's important to have alternatives to these traditional faith-based programs.
It's always important to offer options because no one program works for everyone, and it never has. But in addition, America is increasingly secular. This includes atheists, agnostics, humanist freethinkers, and others. Those who answer none on religious surveys are about a fifth of all American adults, so they actually rival Catholics and evangelical Christians. And they are the fastest growing group. Their numbers have doubled since 1998. So that group will have a particular interest in secular alternatives to the faith-based recovery programs. And She Recovers Foundation, LifeRing Secular Recovery, Women for Sobriety, these are just three of the options.
And womenforsobriety.org is the website. SheRecovers.org and LifeRing.org are things we're talking about tonight. And, it's sort of like this is really sort of an open-ended question because, substance use is more complicated than just good or bad. People have been using a wide variety of substances for thousands of years. We celebrate successes, that we deal with grief and sadness. It's kind of a rite of passage, and sometimes it's just to explore different states of consciousness to pursue spiritual insights. But how does somebody know the difference between substance use and substance abuse? Let's start with Adrian.
Well, I think it's not so much a question of substance abuse, because that kind of indicates that I'm consciously doing something bad with this substance. And when we start to talk about substance use disorders, we're really talking about people who are using substances often in quite a normal way, right? Drinking a glass of wine with dinner or, experimenting with cocaine at the college party. And as you indicated, there's lots of reasons why humans use substances. And there's also lots of reasons why it can go bad and become problematic. But I personally don't really like the term substance abuse because it sounds like I'm consciously doing something bad with these substances. And what we find is that it's a much more subconscious process that slowly the drug or the alcohol becomes more and more important to a person's life and starts to become problematic. And it's not so much a conscious process.
And how do you respond to that, Mary Beth?
Well, I think when your substance is interfering with the choices you would actually want to make for yourself, when you're choosing the substance over the rest of your life, that's obviously an area a point where you've become problematic substance use disorder. But there's really been an interesting discussion increasing over the last few years about how using alcohol and other drugs can actually be problematic and interfere with life enjoyment even before it becomes what would perhaps be officially categorized as a substance use disorder. That often people can use it to manage their emotions, and that's not always the best approach, or for conflict avoidance, or a lot of other reasons that may not be the actual best method of addressing that issue in their life. And so now there are programs where people go sober for a month, or they only drink once a week or similar. So there's really a broader conversation around the use of substances beyond just those who have what is categorized by, psychologists or doctors as a substance use disorder.
So it brings us around to a good point, which is that there's all these opportunities for people who feel the need to work on what they're doing. So how does the approach of things like Women for Sobriety or She Recovers do this in a way that makes it okay for people to feel like they can they can be part of the organization. You want to start with it? Go ahead.
Sorry. Women for Sobriety is really, our first statement is, I have a life-threatening problem that once had me. And I don't have to get to the point where it is actively threatening my life to start to become active in questioning my use of alcohol or other drugs, right? So Women for Sobriety tends to be pretty open about, you don't have to hit bottom. You don't have to wait until it gets as bad as it can get. You can choose to start to focus on emotional and spiritual growth well before you fall completely down the rabbit hole. And we've found that over the years, especially as the conversation around substance use changes, and as people have become more and more accepting of treatment and the ability of people to recover and their willingness to kind of recover out loud, that women get into our program sooner and sooner. And so they don't need to wait until everything is as bad as it could get. And I think Women for Sobriety has done a pretty good job at being welcoming of women, no matter where in that process they are. There's space for them to come to us and explore their substance use and the possibility of becoming sober.
And Mary Beth, what about the approach that She Recovers Foundation has?
So She Recovers is actually broader than just substance use disorder. She Recovers mantra is that everyone is recovering from something. About 75% of the members do categorize themselves as having a substance use disorder, but She Recovers is also for women with behavioral health issues and other life challenges. And that includes things like trauma history, eating disorders, mental health, grief. All of these overlap, and so She Recovers is really a place where women can talk about these together rather than siloing them into separate support systems. So in She Recovers, there are many women who are at different places on the spectrum of substance use, and they're all welcome to discuss openly where they are, what their goals are, what their hopes are. There's a lot of open conversations about what works for different women. Suggestions are shared, ideas are shared. So the entire spectrum of substance use is in She Recovers, as well as other areas of behavioral health and life challenges.
This is 89.7 KFJC and Thoughtline. Tonight we are talking about sobriety, about recovery with Adrian Miller, the president and CEO of Women for Sobriety, and Women for Sobriety's website is womenforsobriety.org, and also Mary Beth O'Connor, who is a retired federal administrative law judge, is on the board of She Recovers Foundation and LifeRing Secular Recovery, and is an advocate and has been published in the Wall Street Journal and Philadelphia Inquirer. This is 89.7 KFJC. And so we're talking about people who are thinking about where they are in their life. What about the people who are in drug rehab? Do the drug rehab places ensure that their clients are exposed to a variety of different recovery support group options? Adrian?
I worked as a drug and alcohol counselor before I came on board at Women for Sobriety. And it's really hit or miss whether a drug treatment program will include all of the options. All of the ones that I worked at did include all of the options. Sometimes that was specifically why I was brought on board, was because I could help expand the program in that way. There are a lot of treatment programs that are very focused on the 12 steps, and that are really, I've heard of people joke about, rehab is the, $5,000 introduction to the 12 steps. And so it's definitely changing, and the landscape is broadening, and I think as we gain more evidence for some of these other options, that we're just as valid, we're just as effective, we're just as helpful to people. I think that is starting to change. But unfortunately, it's not yet the norm that a treatment center would make sure that they educate their clients about all of the different options. So that's part of, I think, what Mary Beth and I are working together to help change. That's part of why we've decided to join forces in doing some outreach for our 3 programs, is to help just continue the work of getting us into the conversation about recovery. And I found that as a counselor, as I would introduce people to all of their different options, self-efficacy is a big thing in recovery, right? People building their self-worth and feeling like they can be effective at managing their own lives. And so providing clients with a choice of, okay, here's AA, here's LifeRing, here's Smart Recovery, here's Recovery Dharma, here's Women for Sobriety. People really appreciated that. And I found, and this is just purely anecdotal from my own personal experience, that even people who had been questioning, say, the dominant paradigm, which is AA, when they came in to treatment, if they were presented with all the options and allowed to explore all the options, even if at the end of their treatment they decided to recommit to AA or NA and work a 12-step program, they just had a little bit more buy-in. They had more commitment because they had chosen it. And I think that was the most powerful piece for me in offering those choices. Because so much of our choice is ripped away in addiction. We don't see any option except to continue to use. And so empowering people in recovery with, here are all these options you can choose from, make the choice that works best for you, can be a really powerful thing for people new to recovery.
And Mary Beth, do you want to answer the same question?
So, I can tell you what my personal experience was, and this was in 1993-94, where I went into, I thought, just a rehab, a medical treatment facility. But on the first day there, they told me that I needed to turn my will and my life over to a higher power. And I told them that I was an atheist and I couldn't do that. And they just insisted that was the only way to do it. That was the only option. They told me directly, repeatedly, this is the only way to stay clean and sober. And so that was problematic for me. And I really had to decide early on, a few days in, what am I going to do? And I decided to just listen for the ideas that I thought would be useful and ignore everything else. But I shouldn't have been put in that position. They didn't tell me before I walked in the door that it was a 12-step treatment program, and that does still happen today. People aren't informed so that they could even know that they're walking into a 12-step house treatment program. On the other hand, I do think it's somewhat better than it was when I went into rehab in those days, but I know a lot of members that come into LifeRing still face those challenges with their treatment facilities, and it's unfortunate. On the other hand, LifeRing is increasingly asked to present to treatment centers and to start meetings at those facilities. I do presentations at treatment facilities here in the Bay Area, so I think there's been some improvement, but it does still have a ways to go.
So National Recovery Month is occurring in September. And Adrian, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about what National Recovery Month is and what's going to be happening. Adrian, are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great. Sorry about that.
Well, that's okay. Most of our equipment here is held together with baling wire, so I always figure that it's our fault first. So
that was me. So National Recovery Month, it's in its 32nd year this year, and it's probably has a lot to do with, like I talked about, this recovery getting more and more on the forefront, and people realizing that recovery is possible. The National Recovery Month happens every September. It's an opportunity to raise awareness about addiction and recovery and how recovery is possible. and to help those of us in recovery celebrate the gains that we have made. If you had told me 11 years ago that I would be out and proud and shouting my recovery from the rooftop, I probably would have hidden under the covers and told you were crazy. But recovering out loud, it's really shining a beacon of hope for those who are still suffering. Because when you're in it, you really just don't feel like there is the possibility of getting better. And so Recovery Month is an opportunity for those who are in recovery to celebrate that and to be proud of it. And we see a lot of, there's some online campaigns where people will share their personal stories. There's often local recovery fairs. I've participated in recovery walks and other, local community events where often there's like local community resources. So the local SMART group or the local LifeRing group or the local WFS group might be there with a table with local members ready to answer questions about their program or the services that they offer for professional treatment centers. So it's a great opportunity to really see some other people in recovery and just to celebrate the awesomeness that is recovering from addiction, because so often addiction is just it's so stigmatized in our culture. So I love Recovery Month because it's a chance to just be out and loud and proud about being in recovery.
So the people you're trying to reach are both the people who have who started down on the road, and also trying to reach some of the people who might just be starting a journey.
I think so, and I think it's also an opportunity for family members and loved ones who may be either supporting people in recovery or who are maybe feeling a little hopeless about their loved ones who are in addiction. It can be an opportunity for them to see that there is hope and there's a whole community of people out there ready to help their loved ones if they're ready.
Now, Mary Beth, there's a number of local events that are going to happen, but that maybe you could tell us some of the National Recovery Month local events.
Yes, so in Santa Clara County, the organization that runs the Recovery Month events is Many Paths, One Destination, and you can find them online on their website, of course. They're having events on October 9th, face-to-face speakers, and there will be tabling by various recovery organizations. If you go to their website, last year it was by Zoom, of course, and I was actually one of the speakers. There were about 8. It's a really good video to watch with a number of speakers to get an idea about what it's going to be like this year. And then San Mateo County, the organization that runs the San Mateo County events is Voices of Recovery for San Mateo County, so VORSMC.org. I was actually a speaker there 2 years ago. They have a number of events from August 27th through September 30th. There's a candlelight vigil. One day there will be a recovery resource fair, an art show. There is a presentation to the Board of Supervisors with speakers. There's a lunch, a walk of hope, and a number of virtual events. If you're in a different county, I expect they will have events as well. Just Google Recovery Month activities in your county, and you should be able to find the events. And
so again, what are the types of people that you're hoping to get involved and hoping to enjoy these events?
So there are often people there. The speakers tend to be people with a significant amount of time, with a variety of experiences. The audience is often newcomers. Some of the treatment facilities will bring their clients to the events, but there's usually a mix of people from friends who are meeting up to have a happy day, congratulating themselves or celebrating their recovery. So it's usually a wide mix of people. And Adrian's right. Sometimes it's family and friends there as well to support and congratulate their family member on their success.
And and so they can go. Listeners can go to vorsmc.org for the San Mateo County program, and many paths plural, one DESTION, kind of a shortened destination. Many paths, one destination.org. And that's face-to-face on the 9th, but there are last year's videos available. This is 89.6.
And actually, I think that was
Go ahead.
I said that was actually, I think, a typo.
Oh, a typo. So it is the whole destination. Okay. Many paths,
Correct.
one destination.org. Okay. I just want to make sure I get it right. This is 89.7 KFJC and Thoughtline. Tonight we're talking about recovery. We're talking about sobriety, and we have the president and CEO of Women for Sobriety, an organization that is woman-focused, and their website is womenforsobriety.org. And also Mary Beth O'Connor, a retired federal administrative law judge who's a recovery advocate and on the board of She Recovers Foundation and LifeRing Secular Recovery. If you don't mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the 13 acceptance statements of the New Life program because I found them so very interesting. That number one is I have a life-threatening problem that once had me, and I'll now take charge of my life and my well-being. I accept the responsibility. Number two is negative thoughts destroy only myself. The first conscious sober act is to reduce negativity in my life. Number three is happiness is a habit I am developing. Happiness is created, not waited for. Number four, problems bother me only to the degree I permit. And I now better understand my problems, and I do not permit problems to overwhelm me. Number five is I am what I think. I'm capable, competent, caring, compassionate woman. Number six is life can be ordinary or it can be great. Greatness is mine by a conscious effort. Love can change the course of the world is number seven. Caring is all important. Number eight, the fundamental object of life is emotional and spiritual growth. Daily, I put my life into proper order, knowing which are the priorities. Number nine, the past is gone. No longer am I victimized by the past. I am a new woman. Number 10 is all love given returns. I am learning to know that I am loved. Number 11 is enthusiasm is my daily exercise. I treasure the moments for my new life. Number 12 is I am a competent woman and I have much to give to life. That is what I am, and I shall know it always. And the 13th step is, or the 13th acceptance statement is, I am responsible for myself and for my actions. I am in charge of my mind, my thoughts, and my life. That's some really nice, powerful stuff that is very different. I'm not going to read the 12 steps of the other organization, but this is all about empowerment, isn't it? This is all about somebody taking it on themselves and finding their strength through who they are, isn't it? Adrian?
It really is. It's really designed to be an empowerment approach. And one of Dr. Kirkpatrick is our program founder. When she founded the program, she was really looking at women's needs versus men's needs. She was a sociologist, and so she was very interested in the role of women in our society. And she was really looking at the fact that women are very good caretakers, right? We're raised to take care of others. We're raised to take care of babies and to put ourselves second. Maybe even raise our husbands, right? Or take care of our husbands. Right. So where do women end up in all that? And then in the mid-'70s, when she was doing this, women were really getting more vocal, being in the workforce and taking on more senior-level management positions in the workforce. And, where does the woman fit in, trying to bring home the bacon and fry it in the pan, right? Where does she have room for herself? And a lot of women found that at the bottom of a bottle. And so what our program does is, and through these statements, is really work on, okay, what are maybe some better coping skills, right? Like problems bother me only to the degree I permit, maybe challenging some of my negative thinking about some of the problems that I'm facing, and then create healthier coping skills, right? How to maybe create more happiness, how to put myself first, right? Our seventh statement is love can change the course of my world. And the part that we often forget is I need to love myself as well. And this has shown to be a big part of a lot of women's addiction, is a lack of self-esteem, a lack of self-confidence, a lack of that self-efficacy. So if I can love myself and take a really proactive approach to my life, I no longer need to drink or use drugs to medicate my stress or to prioritize myself, right? I can give myself permission to do the things that make me happy and that make me feel like there's greatness in my life and love in my life. I don't need to do that in an unhealthy way, which is usually a big part of what drugs and alcohol are doing for us.
I think the thing that was very interesting about Dr. Jean Kilpatrick, who founded Women for Sobriety, is in all the years of her drinking, she was not once diagnosed as being as having a substance use disorder.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, and I think that could have been a bit of a product of the times now. I know that very early in my mental health recovery journey, they identified that my drinking and drug use was a big part of my problem. But I think especially back then, it just, it certainly wasn't talked about for women, right? Why can't you drink like a lady, right? Was something that Dr. Kirkpatrick wrote about quite a bit with that kind of attitude, right? Women don't have these problems. And women are also much more likely to, especially with alcohol use, be those closet drinkers. Or, they drink, have a glass of wine while they prepare dinner. And to keep it kind of under wraps. It's much more kind of shameful for women. So, yeah, it's always been interesting to me that they didn't spot that for Dr. Kirkpatrick earlier, and that they attributed it to depression or anxiety or stress, right? Rather than if you drink that much, that's going to cause you to be a little bit unhealthy.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Betty Ford, who the first lady of President Gerald Ford, who talked about her alcoholism, and she said, "My makeup wasn't smeared. I wasn't deceived. I behaved properly, and I never finished off the bottle. So how can I be an alcoholic?" And I think that it's a tough thing for people to understand where they are and what some things are doing to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we have this concept in our mind that an alcoholic is the bum living under the bridge, with the brown paper bag. And that is not at all what most people's addiction problem looks like. Certainly it can look like that, but it doesn't always look like that.
Well, I want to switch a little bit to talk about Mary Beth O'Connor, talk about the She Recovers program, because that also, as you said, is not just for sobriety. It's for about a lot of different things. And I thought was interesting was it looks like yoga plays a big part in the services that She Recovers offers. Could you talk about that?
Yoga, there are yoga meetings, there are meditations as well. There's even a recovery dance meeting through She Recovers that a lot of women really enjoy. And there are a number of retreats that are offered throughout the year. Of course, with COVID, they didn't have those, but now the retreats are starting up again. And the retreats usually have a yoga component to them. So yes, the meditation, yoga, dance, the physical areas that you can do for your body and for sort of your spirit are emphasized in She Recovers.
And that sherecovers.org is the website. When we think about the special needs of people who are looking at trying to get better, how do people find out about these programs? I mean, how did you find out about these programs? How did you get started with Women for Sobriety, Adrian?
Well, I think I asked Dr. Google, and similarly to Mary Beth, I just knew that AA was not going to be a good match for me. So I think I Googled women and recovery. And we find that by and large, because there is, sometimes a lack of this type of information and treatment circles, we find that a lot of women find us by Googling us or Googling something similar to maybe non-AA recovery or women in recovery or women in alcohol. So that is by and large the largest referral source for us is the internet. Which is great because, so many women can now access our program. And we have extensive online support available as well. We have daily check-in meetings in the morning for women. We have full-length meetings throughout the week on Zoom. We have a 24/7 support website where women can get support year-round or, around the clock. And then we have been doing a lot more outreach. We started to hear from our local facilitators that they are hearing the women that come into their meetings are saying more and more often, my counselor told me about this, my therapist told me about this, my doctor told me about this, which is great because we've really done a lot of work with reaching out to treatment professionals and doctors and others to tell them about our program. And to hope that they would spread the word to their patients, because of course, Google will tell you all kinds of things, but you hear it from your doctor, and many people will take it just a little bit more seriously. So probably primarily the internet is where most people hear about us, sometimes from their friends and sometimes from doctors or treatment providers.
And so, Mary Beth, how did you find out about She Recovers? How did you find a place to go after knowing that you had to sort of work things out for yourself?
Well, it was actually 1994, and so I went to the library because there was no internet, and I looked for options, and the first alternative I found was actually Women for Sobriety. And then I found Rational Recovery, which is now Smart Recovery, and I found SOS Secular Organization for Sobriety, which is LifeRing's parent. And so I found them at the library, and I began attending meetings, and I did what LifeRing calls build a personal recovery plan. I didn't follow any one program. I just pulled ideas from all of them that I thought would work for me. And then She Recovers is newer. They weren't around when I got sober in 93, 94, but I was referred to them because I do have a trauma history as well as an anxiety history, and my friend recommended She Recovers Foundation to me, and I went to a conference they had in LA, and the energy and excitement of the women to be participating in the program was just it was just such a dynamic environment that I reached out to the founders and offered my services, and they asked me to join that board as well. So it's really exciting to me to be able to participate in both LifeRing, Secular Recovery, and the She Recovers Foundation. I think for LifeRing now, people find us by mostly by searching for alternatives to 12 steps or for secular recovery. And with She Recovers, I think it's similar to how they find WFS. But we're all trying to do more outreach and just make people aware. I mean, my goal is always just to help people know that the options exist so that they can make an informed decision about what is the right approach for them. So that will increase their odds of success, and that's really all I care about.
Because one size does not fit all.
Correct.
Right. Well, this is 89.7 KFJC and Thoughtline. Tonight, we're talking about recovery, we're talking about sobriety, we're talking about the National Recovery Month, which is coming up in September. And we're talking with Adrian Miller, who is the president and CEO of Women for Sobriety. Womenforsobriety.org is their website. And Mary Beth O'Connor, a retired federal administrative law judge who's on the board of She Recovers Foundation and LifeRing Secular Recovery, as well as being a recovery addict. A recovery advocate. So is there a Freudian mask during the pandemic since we all have So
you know, I'm pretty addicted to recovery, so I don't think I want to give it up. So I'm okay. I don't know about Mary Beth, but I'm okay if someone wants to call me a recovery addict.
Well, and I will say that part of the reason that I personally wanted to become more open about recovery is because I do have the addict side and not, alcohol was not my drug of choice. And so part of the reason I really wanted to really start becoming more open and more public, and as I say, it's hard to be more public about your former methamphetamine addiction than to announce it in the Wall Street Journal. But it was to make sure that the other drugs were covered, as far as people really understanding that recovery encompasses alcohol and all other drugs, and that recovery is just as possible for a methamphetamine addict as it is for someone who is suffering from alcohol use disorder.
And of course, these days, opioid addiction is racing through the country. That it's so easy to get them, and so easy to get addicted to them.
Yes, I mean the overdose rate has really gone up during COVID, but the overdose for methamphetamine in San Francisco is almost equal to that of opiates. So
really?
The problems, drugs tend to take their little ebbs and flows. For a while, opiates are more popular, and then the amphetamines or the stimulants are more popular, so it goes up and down. But right now, you're right. Opiates are a significant problem, and there's been a large increase in overdoses during COVID, as well as there's been a large increase in alcohol problems during COVID. So people are facing particular challenges at this moment.
So, Adrian, when you're meeting with people and talking to them, what's the most important things that you want them to know right off the bat?
About Women for Sobriety or about recovery?
Well, let's make it broad. It's not just women for sobriety, but the whole, the whole world of recovery.
I want people to know that recovery is possible, and not only is it possible, it's the best thing in the world. I love it. When I was first told you need to give up the alcohol and the drugs if you want to start feeling better, I thought it was a punishment. And I thought, well, I can't do my favorite thing anymore. My life is going to be terrible. And one of my favorite quotes by WFS founder Gene Kirkpatrick is, "Sobriety is to be enjoyed, not endured." And when I was in the depths of despair, of addiction, and felt completely unlovable, completely hopeless, just dark and just broken down, the thought that recovery could be good, and that I could have fun, and that life could be great, like that just seemed like a ridiculous promise. So when I'm talking about recovery, it can be hard, right? It's not easy to turn your life around. but it is so worth it. And it's worth making the effort to create the habit of happiness and to practice enthusiasm and to create this wonderful new life that just doesn't mean alcohol and drugs. And so if I have one thing to communicate about recovery, it's that it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world or the end of your life as you know it. It can be this wonderful, new, amazing, fabulous experience where you make all kinds of new connections, meet all kinds of new people that you just love and connect to authentically and fully and with your full faculties. And you remember every conversation the next day, which is also an added bonus, right? But recovery, it can be hard, but it's not terrible. It's actually the most wonderful thing in the world. So that's me getting excited about recovery.
No, I'm glad. That was great. That was great. Well, I wanted to ask Mary Beth. Mary Beth, your website is junkietoJudge.com. So you obviously have an interesting career path. And when you talk to people, about sobriety and recovery, what do you think the important things they need to know are?
I mean, I agree with everything that Adrian said. One of the things when I go out to the recovery houses that I really emphasize is that the hard part is the beginning. You know, when I had my 27-year birthday in recovery this year, people are, yay, 27 years. And my response is, going from 26 to 27 is not the hard part. I mean, it's just not. The beginning is the challenge, but it gets easier and easier with time. And for me, after about 2.5 years, I really didn't struggle with it ever again. And the data is very strong for people who hit 5 years. I think it's around 85% who will never relapse again. And it's not that there's a light switch at the 5-year mark. I mean, the numbers increase as time goes by. And so I try to encourage the newcomers to really not think of it as a life sentence, but the challenging part is early. It gets better over time. Once you get through that, your life will be so much better in the ways that Adrian described, but most people don't struggle forever. So there is a light at the end of that struggle tunnel.
And it helps to thoroughly immerse yourself in a new direction, right?
Yes, I mean, for me in early recovery, I did something every day for about the first 18 months, whether it was therapy or it was one of my different types of meetings. Now, everyone can't do that, and not everyone needs that. But the beginning is the time that you need to put forth, the greatest effort. It's also the time of learning, right? I mean, you're really educating yourself about addiction, about recovery. You're talking to people about the techniques that they use. You're watching, the success stories. How did they do it? You're absorbing a lot of information. And so that is the immersive time, is that early recovery period.
And why do you choose the word junkie, the junkie to judge?
I mean, I think I use it for a number of reasons. I mean, I love the alliteration, and it captures attention. But I really think that the junkie to judge is a concise summary of the arc of my life. But also, junkie and judge are both words with social resonance, right? Judges have a notable role in society and are generally viewed with a certain level of respect. And I thought that society actually views addicts on a sort of a hierarchy, right? It's better to be addicted to alcohol than to meth. It's better to pop pills than to shoot up. And an intravenous meth addict is at the bottom of that social strata. And so I try to connect the terms junkie and judge as sort of proof that anyone can recover and succeed no matter how low their addiction took them. I hope that my progression can help contribute to reducing stigma, can help, increase willingness to help those still suffering, to know that who you are in the midst of your addiction is not who you are going to be if you can find your path to sobriety.
And just to go one step further with that you talked about stigma, and there is a lot of stigma and a lot of shame that accompanies a lot of the words that are around recovery, alcoholic, junkie, the substance abuser, that these are the kind of things that take people who are having problems with their own self-confidence and self-image, and make it even harder to make any changes.
Yes, and that's part of why in LifeRing we don't require that people identify themselves as an addict. That's a choice. In Women for Sobriety, I remember the first meeting I went to, you introduce yourself, you say, I'm Mary Beth and I'm a competent woman. And for me, that was it felt so empowering. When I first went into the rooms, I didn't actually mind identifying myself as an addict. I thought it was important to sort of pound that into my brain. But even after 6 months, it just didn't really fit who I was. I viewed myself as someone who was had an addiction history, especially after more and more time went by. In modern terminology, you would say that I had a substance use disorder that was in remission. But addict or alcoholic isn't really the essence of who you are in recovery. And so other terminology is more comfortable for many people. And I still do love Women for Sobriety's I'm a competent woman.
That's great. That's cool. And I wanted to ask about how you met each other. How do you know each other, Mary Beth and Adrian?
Mary Beth reached out to me.
Go ahead, Adrian. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. What? Go ahead. Adrian, I think.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Mary Beth just reached out to me one day, and she said, I think she just said, I've been in recovery for over 20 years. I think she told me she was one of the first drug addicts in Women for Sobriety, and that her local group, she had to ask them, I know that you guys focus mostly on alcohol. Can I still come even though I'm a drug addict? And I thank you, Mary Beth, for doing that, because I also struggled with drugs, and having that door opened to where I could come to this program and show up fully as both someone who was struggling with alcohol and someone who was struggling with drugs, it was really important to my recovery. And so I thank you for being a person to lead that charge and help Women for Sobriety see how important it is that, addiction is addiction, and we can support each other regardless of what particular substance we do. So thank you. And thank you, Mary Beth, for reaching out to me and introducing yourself. It's been wonderful to get to know you.
Well, that's great. It's always interesting how people are connected with each other. So when we're talking about personal stories, it's all about us. But in some ways, the whole thing is you're trying to empower another person to be able to tell their own story. And do you feel that helping tell your own story helps other people talk about themselves? Adrian?
I think it definitely does. We will often see new people come in, and, addiction can be very isolating. And, especially people who, hide their use, right? Especially our older women closet drinkers. We really think we're the only one. We really think, gosh, I am worse than everyone else. I am a terrible person for having this problem. Nobody else has this problem, because people don't talk about it. And so to come into a peer support group where other women are very openly saying, oh yeah, I had that problem too, and I don't have that problem anymore. I'm in recovery now. It really brings so much of that isolation away, and it really helps you feel like, gosh, I'm not alone. If other people can do it, I can do it. And hearing their authentic sharing helps you open up and helps you see that, okay, I'm not the worst person in the world. This is something that other people have dealt with and other people have gotten better from.
And how do you see that, Mary Beth? If you see talking about the episodes of your life help connect with other people to talk about theirs?
I think it does help people to know, to be able to see an example, to be able to know, to see many examples of women or men who have recovered. It makes it seem possible. I know for me in early recovery, when I went to rehab, I actually didn't plan to stop using because I couldn't imagine it. It was beyond my imagination. And so even in the rooms, hearing other people tell their story about how they had been in as bad a shape as I was, and now I'm looking at them and they have a year or 2 years or more sober, and they've put their life back together bit by bit, step by step. It gave me hope that if they could do it, then, maybe I could do it too. And so whether it's in the rooms or if it's in public, it's a way to sort of model the possibility. It's hard. Early recovery is difficult. It's a lot easier if we can give you hope that you can succeed, that you can recover, and that we are here to help you.
And so Women for Sobriety is a women's oriented program. You can go to womensforsobriety.org to find out more about that. She Recovers is for a more broad range of issues and problems that women might have with that they want to recover from, and you can go to sherecovers.org for that. And LifeRing, LifeRing.org is is not a gender-specific organization, but it's also a secular organization. So if you're looking for something like that, LifeRing.org. This is 89.7 KFJC on Thoughtline. Tonight, the guests have been Adrian Miller, the president and CEO of Women for Sobriety, and Mary Beth O'Connor, a retired federal administrative law judge who is a recovery advocate and is on the board of She Recovers and LifeRing Secular. Do you have anything? You want to leave us with, Adrian?
I hope that any woman out there who is struggling or even just think she might have a problem and is not sure, will just reach out, just see what's out there for you. It may not be quite as scary as you think. It may be just as scary as you think. There's a lot of other women who have been through it and who will help you and support you as you decide, if you decide to take action on your drinking or drug use.
Mary Beth, do you have anything you'd like to leave us with?
I would just like to say that if anyone wants to reach out to me for any reason, they can reach me at marybeth@junkietojudge.com. I'm happy to, answer any questions or offer any assistance that I can. And I really do appreciate you making this forum available to us so that we can just let people know who wouldn't otherwise know about the options that might be a good fit for them.
Well, thank you very much. And on Thoughtline every week, we tell you if there's something you're interested in, get involved in it, and don't let anyone make up your mind for you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Coming up next is more great music on KFJC. And until next week, this is Robert Emmett saying, be seeing you.
Opinions expressed on KFJC are not necessarily those of its staff or management. Responsible parties with opposing views may be provided time to air those views. For more information, write to the Public Affairs Director at KFJC 12345 El Monte Road, Los Altos Hills, California. 94022. Broadcasting from Foothill College, this is KFJC, Los Altos Hills.